So, we're going to try today having Lila in the session and see how things go. Welcome to everyone who's here so far. I'm Jen. I'm the owner and operator of Actually Dyed Art by Science. And today's topic is going to be focused on hairy wool, or more specifically, a dual-coated sheep. And what do you do with it? What have I done with it in the past? Kind of like an informal discussion on whether you should try to dehair it or keep it together as a complete fleece. One of the things about this particular time of the day is Layla gets extremely chatty. So she's had all of her breakfast at this point, and she's had a nap. That's usually about 4 or 5 hours. And she gets extremely active before she starts doing her dinner march. So if she behaves herself, I'll allow her to stay. Anyway, so we have quite a few locations. Right now we've got some people in the US watching, and also from Australia, which is pretty amazing, actually. So earlier today, if I look a little red, it's because I went to the neighboring park, Abbey Park specifically, so that I could have a relaxing respite, since this last week has been extremely complex. So I've been trying to get things done for Actually Dyed and working my part-time job at the chocolate shop. But I've also been working on a business plan. So for those of you who watched last time, I was actually in negotiations trying to get some situation figured out with an investor and a yarn distributor. So nothing is actually solid right now, but I am hoping that there will be something going forward, because I really want the opportunity to apply my skills for something that's more than just getting yarn into people's hands, because although that's really the goal, it's more also for me about the message. So yeah, I'm really excited, except it also takes a lot of time. So I'm hoping that it's going to go somewhere so that I feel better about my time investment. But it has been taking precedence, because timing is everything, and so I haven't been able to get as much stuff done as I want to. But as you can see, I have actually reassembled my wheel. So this week I did a lot of different kinds of filming. I filmed some knitting. I filmed a Patreon video for those of you who follow me on Patreon. I will have links in the description, but I don't at the moment. But I sort of will have a video of me doing the finishing touches on my wheel, and then putting it all back together. So I will edit that video hopefully next week, and then get that uploaded maybe by the end of next week, possibly over the weekend. And then I did a fiber talk video on Friday before I had to jet off to work. You can see how excited she is right now. She wants to eat spinning wheel oil, and I can't tell her enough that it's not good for kitties. Yeah, so I will have this fiber talk video on the docket to be edited, and then I've got another video, kind of like a promo video of knitting. So Christine, or Chris, you might see her in the chat, she's actually someone who has sent me occasionally something just randomly out of the blue. And there was I mentioned it last week, and she posted, I think, the link in the chat maybe, or maybe it was on the live stream from last week. But essentially it was a hand weaver, and there was a song in the background playing that everything takes forever, and that's why it costs what it does. So I thought the last project video that I did where I was actually making some yarn for my hand spun sweater project, that that did well enough for a 2.5-minute video. So I thought I would do another one for knitting, but I am actually knitting this sweater project, which I'm hoping to come up with a recipe knit. So for those of you who do hand spun and are kind of in the same boat with me, where it's like commercial yarns are great, but I need a bit more flexibility from a hand spun yarn point of view. Because I think that's really the disconnect. When I look at patterns, I think, well, I don't want to spin that yarn. I want to spin a yarn that I want, and I think because what I know about knitting, this yarn will still work for that pattern, right? And making adjustments to a written pattern that has a commercial yarn at its core is much more complicated than I'm willing to deal with. So I feel like recipe knits are really important because as long as you know gauge and a few key body measurements, you can pretty much design whatever type of garment you want because you know those things. And so for me, that's a much simpler approach, and for me, it helps me overcome the hurdle of just like getting started. So anyway, I have a little knitting video that has this sweater pattern as the feature. And so I've knitted a bit more since the last live stream, where I think I mostly just had the red part done. But yeah, I need sweaters because I live in Britain. Hopefully you can see that all right. I've had to do a little bit of arranging in this room to get the lighting at least halfway decent because it's a cloudy day, so it's on and off with the clouds. But yeah. So I'm going to be putting together another short little video on this, and the Fiber Talk video, and the Patreon video, so I'm going to have probably a very video heavy editing week next week. So, hello to Natalie and Sonia and Pauline and Karen. I'm sure there's a few more of you. If you are lurking and you want me to say hello to you, just feel free to put something in the comments and I'll say hi. Yeah, I think I was on this track when I was doing a cardigan. It was a cropped cardigan. I did it in a daily vlog, like 54 or 3 or something. And I got part written with what I had in terms of notes, and then I had to stop. And then I came back to it, and then I test knitted it, and then I was pretty much just in a mad dash trying to finish my PhD. So, yeah. I'll be able to get back to it now, but I'm sort of laser focused on doing the sweater pattern first, just because I really, really wanted to use this yarn. So this yarn was reclaimed from a weaving fail from, I wove something back in 2013, hated it, and then it sat there waiting to be unwoven for many years. And I finally finished unweaving it earlier this year. So I wanted to use this yarn right away because, I don't know, it was like burning a hole in my inventory. I had to use it. As you do. Yes, hello to all the quiet people. I do this a lot where I just spin wherever because I enjoy spinning, and that's actually what I want to be doing today. I have a giant tote of hand spun yarn that I just don't really do anything with, and I don't really have a plan when I begin doing it. So because this is made with the Columbia yarn that I talked about in, I think it was Fiber Talk episode number 15, one of my goals with the Fiber Talk episodes is to actually make a project with that and then sort of come back and discuss it again now that I've used it for something. So texturally it's kind of an interesting combination, using the Columbia for the top and then merino wool here for the bottom. But I think I'll be happy with the end result because, well, I won't give you too many spoilers. But I will end up talking about it in a video. So, I am, yeah, that was a sweater. That was because of you, Crystal, basically saying, you know, just knit a sweater with it. Fire and Willow sounds like such a cool name. Welcome. So today's topic is about dual-coated fleeces. So I talk about North Ronaldsay in one of my Fiber Talk episodes, and the reason why that particular video is a little longer than some of the other ones is because I studied Iron Age British textile production, particularly in the South, and one of the sheep breeds that could have been more widespread during this period was North Ronaldsay. So today it's more restricted to coastal lines and more predominantly up north, but that doesn't mean it's always forever been 100% exactly the same. So I used a de-haired North Ronaldsay for, well, it was a Christmas gift that my partner gave me, and it was partially de-haired through a carding machine, a big, well, I guess it was a small mill, but it was a big carder in comparison to the ones that like I use. But it was really, really soft and wonderful to spin. And there is well, he's mostly a Roman scholar called J.P. Wild, that's his name. And he wrote a lot about various wools, and also he talked a lot about the wools from the late Iron Age. And so this obviously becomes a point of interest for me because that is a crossover with my period that I wanted to study. So I'm just peeling out some vegetable matter that I missed. And one of the things that he mentioned in a paper that he wrote in, it was in the 1960s, and essentially he basically said that North Ronaldsay isn't a very good quality fleece. And because I had recently spun North Ronaldsay with my supported spindle, and I had completed my chapter on spindles for my thesis, I kind of revisited this idea of, well, maybe there's more to say about things like twist and how well carded these fibers might actually have been. So if you've got different spinning methods available to you, you might actually employ them based on the fleece and also how you've prepared that fleece. So a dual-coated fleece basically has hairy bits and soft undercoat bits. And there's a couple of philosophies that you can employ when using it. You can either separate the outer part from the inner part, so you have a really soft, fluffy undercoat that you can then card and spin separately. And then you can use the outer stuff for more durable items. You can use it for the warp, although fibers tend to be more brittle. You can use it for padding or wadding. You can use it for insulating of all sorts. And so the question is, you know, how do you combine them? Why would you combine them? And then in the more modern sense, if you combine them in a yarn today, why and how do you spin it? Do you spin it with a wheel, or do you choose to spin it with a spindle? So when I talked about my experience spinning North Ronaldsay there at the beginning of that Fiber Talk episode, I sort of described having used the wheel and being completely unhappy with the result, and then thinking, well, maybe I need something that's a little bit gentler on the twist and the uptake. And so I used my lace drop spindle. It's a suspended spindle, and there was still a bit too much twist for my liking. So what it did is it pushed out all of these hairy bits out of the yarn, and it makes it really prickly. So you might have heard of the prickle factor of wool. So there's lots of different ways to card wool and to spin wool so that you can reduce that. And it doesn't even include carding it with other fibers. So you could card this with another fiber so that it's combined with something that's really soft, and then you can reduce the prickle factor, because overall you are increasing the total percentage of that downy part of the fleece. So this is a very long-winded way of saying that two things. One, I believe that J.P. Wild's authenticity of speaking from a textile expert point of view and not really having any points of contention otherwise has sort of made this perception that wool in the Iron Age was horrible to wear, to work with, that the prickle factor must have made it uncomfortable to wear in the day-to-day, and that they must have maybe this is in part of the reason why there was a greater interest in sort of incorporating Romans into the way that well, there could be many factors, but it could have influenced how Romans were able to integrate into Southeast Britain even before the invasion period of conquest in 43 AD. So yeah, so that's just sort of me thinking from a textile point of view, something that we'll never know the answer to. But, and obviously I'm not going to be talking with J.P. Wild because we do not float in the same circles. Every conference that I've been to where he might be there, he's called away to do some really cool research on a textile somewhere at some museum. So, yeah, that's kind of, in a nutshell, one of the reasons why I've been interested in this topic, because I understand why you might want to separate the fleeces. No. I suddenly heard her purring really loudly. No. So she gets really bad separation anxiety, and I think she has pica, which for cats they have, they need to eat a lot. They need to eat stuff for comfort, and sometimes it's a result of sort of being weaned too early from their mothers, and I think for her it's probably a lot of things. So I have to keep sweaters and certain blankets away from her, otherwise she will do what she just did. That's part of the reason why I made this blanket. So this is hers. She wants to suckle on it, you know, it's fine. Just don't want her to do it to my sweaters. I haven't even had a chance to wear this one yet. Okay, so I'm just going to check in to see what's what. I have now picked open this wool, and I will talk a little bit more about this in just a second. Oh, in place of horsehair stuffing, this actually, it's definitely less wiry than that. So it's quite possible that they would have used this as stuffing for things. I mean, you would probably need a lot of it because, yeah, I mean, you could probably hand to hair some of it. but I also don't know how much horsehair you would harvest from a horse. And in the period in the landscape I'm talking about, it's the chalk downlands of southeast Britain, and they're not really able to support larger animals. Mostly you have sheep, followed by cattle and pigs. But usually the cattle are closer to a stream or a large enough body of water. And even with horses, they're much smaller distribution of horses. Trying to think off the top of my head. Really, you might only find a few bones from a horse, and if you think about how long a particular site might be occupied, the area I looked at, there really weren't many horse remains. If I can think off the top of my head, I think there was just a site that might have, but that was it. And I looked at 7 sites, all related to each other in a landscape. Oh, a horsehair sofa. Oh my goodness. I know. Layla loves wool. I'm pretty sure that if we ever had sheep, she would be all over them at all times. Yeah, so you could definitely use the small bits for small things. And I kind of like the idea of Iron Age parents coming up with fun toys for their kids, because of course they would. So we don't really have any evidence of it, but either parents might have made them or introduced them to the idea, and then the kids sort of took the materials that maybe weren't absolutely required and invented toys from it. So maybe there were bits of wool that weren't necessarily good for this type of woven project or whatever, and then kids, using their endless forms of imagination, created something fun from it. So now that we have talked a little bit about these types of fleeces, what I'm working with here is a North Ronaldsay fleece that isn't the greatest. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm pretty sure, given the amount of vegetable matter in this fleece, this particular sheep did not live a majority of its life in grass, but that is also very presumptuous, because I know that during the winter months you need to feed your animals something if there isn't really much in the way of grass, and it's a particularly long or hard winter for them. You know, push comes to shove, you have to feed them hay. But I also have another North Ronaldsay sheep fleece that's absolutely stunning, and almost none of this chaff bit. Like, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a load of this in there. I'm probably going to have to vacuum in here when I'm all done. So there's that, but there's also the way that it feels. The soft bits, they're not as soft. Okay, that could be down to diet, it could also be down to that specific animal, because they're not really bred for fleece quality. And you know, there's lots of individual aspects of animals that could be manifested in their fleece quality, which may not reflect the overall herd or the way that a shepherd or shepherdess has been maintaining their flock. But all I have to go on is the fleece, and given the other 2 examples that I've worked with, this is not, I think, a representative sample. Yes, it could also be an older sheep, for sure. I know from having talked with one of my guild mates. She's got the Leicester Longwool that I use in my shop, which I've actually just dyed some more. Found a little bit when I was reorganizing my studio. And so thank you to all the patrons on Patreon for helping me, because I needed some extra funds to get enough storage containers to hold all of my wool and to organize it better. So I was able to do that, and I also discovered some wool that I had somehow missed. But she had a 14-year-old ewe that was still producing the most gorgeous fleeces. So sometimes, yes, older animals can produce a coarse fleece compared to what they might have produced during their more productive years, but it isn't always the case, and it isn't across all breeds. But I don't really know much from that end on North Ronaldsay. So yeah, there's just a lot of things. So what did I do to this fleece? I carded it a bunch after washing it, and didn't like the way that it felt. So I probably did the most crazy thing. I added a little bit of cashmere because I really wanted to spin it, and I still wanted to maintain the dual coated aspect of this particular fleece. So I blended in, not a whole lot, but I had some stashed from ages ago, so I used that, and I blended it in because it was a similar staple length as the short fibers of the North Ronaldsay, and I really can't tell the difference. It just all feels the same. So I probably did about 5 passes total to get this blended together. Now, this is where a lot of unknowns are going to become known. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. So we're all going to discover this live. Okay. Sorry. Well, I knew I had some left. I just didn't know how much, and I actually had more than I thought. Because I always like to retain some bits of the prime of the fleece if I ever need it for a custom dye order, because I would rather that person who's paying for the custom dye to actually get the best fleece. So I saved it. I saved some back for that purpose, but no one, well, some people asked for custom dyes, and I did that, but then I still had some extras, so yeah, I'm gonna start getting that dyed up, probably into the shop or maybe into bats, I don't know yet. Hi, Chris. So initially I didn't like the prickle factor of my initial result, but I have 2 bats. I have an identical one like this, which is this one here, and I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I'm hoping that if I'm as gentle as I can be with spinning this single, then I'll be able to make a plied yarn that is still soft against the skin. So let's see if we can get the camera a little closer. Bear with me. Can you see that? Maybe, maybe not. It's really difficult because I have a pale hand and this is a pale yarn. But essentially, when you are twisting a yarn that is made from dual coated fleece, okay, it is too bright. Is this a little better? It's sort of like a darker background here. Can you see that? I don't know if you can. Maybe you can. Okay. Yeah, so essentially what will happen with a dual coated fleece is if you put a lot of twist into the yarn, the bits of the hairy fibers that stick out, since they are a coarser micron, they could probably be between 30 and 50 microns, which a human hair is about 50 microns. So if you make it really tight here in the yarn, then not only will those fibers stick out into the space around it, but they won't move, they won't bend or flex, because the amount of twist is kind of holding them in that rigid position. But if there's a bit more twist, or sorry, less twist here, then if you were to kind of like rub up against it, it will flex inside the yarn itself. So if it gets bumped, then that fiber will flex down and it won't be so prickly. So with a dual coated fleece like this, it's more important to have less twist so that when you are using the yarn or wearing the yarn, it's less prickly up against the skin. But that's to a certain point. And I know with other dual coated fleeces, by combining them together, you actually get a result that's more akin to what it would be like on the animal itself. So if you've ever heard of a Lopi yarn or any of the Icelandic wools, so Icelandic, what's the other one? Gotland. If you spin with those, with the two fleeces together, you can actually put a low amount of twist in there, and the yarn holds together just fine, but you don't have any like really prickly yarns, because like I was saying, there's enough give in the twist where if you are to rub up against those hairy parts of the fleece, they won't be so rigid, they'll actually have some give. But if you have a lot of twist, then there's not a lot of give, and so it just kind of, that hairy part of the yarn just kind of just sticks out. It won't move. However, how does this work with a fleece like this one, where the disparity between the lengths is pretty significant? So like I said, I carded this with cashmere, and cashmere is from a goat, and that is also the undercoat, so they have to be dehaired. So cashmere is a dehaired product. So in this way, I'm actually retaining more properties that the North Ronaldsay would have had actually still on the animal. And so what does that outer coat do? Well, that outer hairy part will kind of keep the water and moisture off of the sheep. And so the undercoat, the soft bits that are a bit shorter, can keep the almost said goat, to keep the sheep warmer. So they work together to make the sheep drier and warmer. And so I'm kind of trying to make the same thing happen with this yarn, where I'm trying to use the positive benefits of both the outer coat and the inner coat together. So with the longer staple of the outer coat, I can actually get by with fewer twists per inch on this yarn than I would be able to if I hadn't carded both the outer and the inner coats together. and that will also impact the way that it looks visually. But because I am not just spinning the outer coat, I still manage to have a lot of soft and loftiness and those air pockets that are really great to have when wearing a sweater. You want your sweater to be warm, right? So that inner coat is actually going to work to my favor so that I can have a soft, warm sweater or warm yarn. I keep saying sweater like I want to have enough for a sweater. I'm probably not. So that's kind of my rationale for using both coats together. It's also way less wasteful. So because we live in a modern world and we don't really have to worry so much about getting a hold of a really soft fleece, I want to see sort of what this fleece could do, how it could function, and I'm all about how things might have been done in the past, like, you know, 2,500 years ago, that kind of past. Navajo churro is another one of those examples of a dual-coated fleece that is often combined together. Hi, Maureen. Yes, my assistant is making everything very interesting right now. She's kind of settled down for the moment, which is nice. Yes, the micron count of a Leicester longwool is more in the, like, I would say between 32 and maybe 38 microns, depending, because I've definitely used some baby stuff that is really, really soft. But obviously it can be upwards. Yeah. So maybe, like I was doing with my supported spindle and overplying, maybe I will do that with this yarn. So I would probably, well, the sun has come out, so apologies. I'm tethered right now to, oh no, what did I do? Oh, that's what I did, hold on. I promise this is going to be worth it. Okay. So what I want to do is, if I overply this a little bit, I'll still be able to have a nice soft yarn that doesn't have a really big prickle factor, but it'll be stronger this way than if I kept it just as a single. But you probably could keep it as a single and it would be okay, but it would probably abrade pretty quickly because, like I said, I'm trying to encourage both aspects of the soft part of the downy soft part of the inner fleece, and then the more structurally sound outer part, but it's more brittle, so you gotta have the twist there to kind of help with it, but not too much twist. It's sort of like having the Goldilocks version of a yarn. Yeah, so probably not enough for a sweater, but it should be enough for me to use as a demonstration of the properties of a dual-coated fleece. Part of this was also spurred on by having a conversation with a wool processor up by Newcastle. He was very passionate about using wool as wool and not really fussing around too much with dehairing it or anything. And he's absolutely right. It's nice to de-hair things um, for the average consumer because there's still this stigma that wool is scratchy and horrible. And if you want people to have wool products, it's usually better to produce something that is more consumer viable than something that is just made because of principle. But because we are hand spinners and we can make a lot of decisions about the types of yarns that we make, I think this is one of those cases where if you've never made a dual coated fleece yarn before, to just give it a try. If anything, you just have a sample that you can spin up and either knit or crochet or weave or all of the above, just to say that you've done it, just to have the experience, just to know a little bit more about what you like and what you don't like, because this does not have to be your thing. It's fine if it's not. Uptake is still a little bit high. And I'm going very slowly right now because I do have a tendency to overspin because I like to have higher twist yarns. I tend to be extremely, what's the word, rambunctious in my clothing. My dad used to say I'm very destructive with my clothing. But my clothes had to be designed for the kid who was always playing rough. When we had like picture day or whatever, my mom always had this big pack of nylons or pantyhose because when I got home from school she'd always have to throw them away because there's not even a point of trying to repair them. So the next time I had to wear them I would have to take out a brand new pair because they would never last even a day. Mittens would be a good idea. Although I probably wouldn't wear them while cycling just because they would fall apart. So the ones that I made out of Ryland are absolutely wonderful. Like, those are perfect. I'll have to do another update video on them, but they haven't abraded or worn. There's almost no pilling whatsoever. And I didn't even dye them. That's just how the color is. So those mittens are fantastic. If you can get a hold of a Ryland fleece, you won't be disappointed. I do have some in my shop if you are interested. And I've just recently dyed a whole bunch, some different colors. So I'll be making some carded bats with that Ryland. If I can find some time next week, I will do that. And also get those spindles in the shop. It's sort of like the bane of my existence, trying to find time to do the things that I really want to do. But sometimes it's just how things go. I'd rather be focused on trying to make my business plan work rather than getting something photographed, because one is sort of pressed by the whims of an investor. So I need to jump on the chance, which I'm sure, well, I can do the work. I'm happy to do the work. I enjoy doing this. I'm doing this on my day off. So I had a 10-hour shift yesterday at the chocolate shop, and I spent the afternoon having a lovely picnic lunch, and here I am having some therapy with you guys on our Sunday and talking about interesting things. Yes, absolutely, Cheryl. Different wools have different uses, and especially with merino. I know a lot of people these days know about merino than maybe 10, 15 years ago. But it can't do everything. It will never be able to do everything. It's really good at a few things, and that's all I expect it to do. You can also blend other things with that merino to increase its shininess or durability. You can change the way that it handles for different types of crafts. But at the end of the day, it won't function in the same way as, say, a long wool will. Oh, I've never heard of a Varnland fleece. Yeah, burrs. I used to have these really cute tights. They were white with little red hearts on them. I did manage somehow to be able to wear them a few times. But, yeah, outside on the monkey bars, in a skirt or a dress, it didn't matter. I'm still very much the same way. Like, I get frustrated if I wear the wrong clothing, because if I want to go run around and I'm not wearing something that allows me to do that, I get really upset. It's part of the reason why I wore jeans to the park today, so that I could have my lunch and lay on a blanket without having to worry about, you know, issues with the skirt. I do love wearing skirts, but not that much. Yes, I'm really hoping the business plan is going to fall into place, because this is literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I do love wool and yarn, and I love doing all these things, but I also am really passionate about sending my message out there. And with the right opportunity, I could actually make all this happen. So I think generally it would be a win-win for anyone else out there who's in my similar category, sort of like a micro business. You do this as a side hustle, or you use this to get like your you know, going out or spa day funds, right? Or whatever reason motivates you to do a business like indie dyer or a spinner or a felt or anything like that. Because we could always use more voices, and we need loud voices, and I'm not one to forget where I come from. So, you know, I really hope that this develops into something that really solidifies the messages that I've been, well, it's been part of my mission statement since my initial founding back in 2010. Which, if you don't know what my mission is, I've got it actually on my website, expertlydyed.com. But I really wanted something that was community, that was environmentally friendly, that was sustainable, that was inclusive. I basically wanted to create new friends, essentially, people who are interested in the same things as me. Least of which, it makes you feel better when you're talking to somebody and you don't have to explain why wool is great or why you go through this tedious task of spinning yarn, because you're talking to people who do the exact same thing as you, and you're like, no, I totally get it. I love that. We need more people like that. So, yeah, I'm hoping something will work out. Oh. Yeah, fibromyalgia, does it, now if I remember, does that give you a lot of skin sensitivity or something to do with nerve endings? But yeah, I can imagine something that's really restrictive on your body could be just, no. Merino really is super easy to get a hold of, and that's because it makes up roughly 50% of the world's production of wool. But it's also part of the reason why all of these heritage breeds are so important to maintain, because Merino can't do everything. And if everyone buys Merino, then who's buying North Ronaldsay? If no one's buying it, then it's not viable except for people who want to keep those particular animals. And so you lose out on the genetic legacy, their heritage, their particular genetic quirks that could be really useful in the future. And the only way to keep them healthy and viable in terms of flock numbers is by supporting the farmers who are, you know, raising these particular breeds. It's Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day, and I almost forgot. I should probably message my mom after this. Oh my goodness, it's Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to everybody. Even if you have no human children, you are a mother if you have, you know, fur babies. I mean, just like the whole concept of mother is much more broad than just have you had human children. But yeah, well, happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. And I think Father's Day is what, the third Saturday of, or third Sunday of June? So that's coming up. Okay. Oh, yeah, highway construction is probably also quite a daunting type job. I actually do have a couple of sari skirts that I have worn a bit like harem pants. That's true. I actually love those skirts because they're so adjustable and they look nice and they have this really beautiful flow. Because for me, one issue that I have is sometimes I don't get a good fit because my thighs are actually large, or because of my hips being large, but my waist is comparatively narrow, so finding like the right kind of jeans that fit me. And there for a while, when everything was super low rise, nothing fit me correctly, because if I got it right on the hip, it was so baggy near my waist that I couldn't actually keep my jeans up, right? Or, you know, you could see down to my underwear. I'm too old for that to be cool anymore. No, thank you. Gosh. Well, loose fitting clothing is definitely key anyway, just because it's much more comfortable. It's better for your skin just to breathe. It's easier to relax when you've got a bit of extra clothing, right? And for me, I'm perpetually cold all the time, so it's nice to have more clothing so that I can kind of wrap up in what I'm wearing. And as a further point to that, so growing up as a fat kid, I have touch issues and visual issues about my belly region. It's gotten worse again because I put on weight during the end of my PhD. That it's coming off, but it's still kind of a bit on the slow side. I've lost a few pounds. I just need to. I want to lose a few more. But, so this recipe knit that I've done here, it doesn't actually have any side shaping, but it's flat stockinette in the front with the V-neck, and then in the back I've done some ribbing. And then in terms of how this looks when you're wearing it, it's really flattering in the front because it's just straight down. And then in the back, because the ribbing kind of pulls in a little bit in each of these little purled sections, you'll actually get it to fit slightly more close to the body without having to do shaping, but it's more flattering to the overall figure without sort of drawing attention to the belly region. So I've already tried it on. I really like it so far, so I'm going with it. I'm carrying on. But I'm probably going to make another post about this on my Patreon to kind of get a sense of how I should do the bottom part of this. I have an idea, and also how to do the shaping for the sleeves. So a lot of women will have more of a sloping shoulder, and I'm actually really broad-shouldered. Also because I weightlift, so, you know, I gotta accommodate my shoulders. So I'm thinking about doing some short rows, but there's also, you know, some other options out there that I might explore. And there's actually not a lot in terms of tutorials about this. At least none that I could find that sort of solve the type of issue I'm looking for. So, yeah, I'll probably do more with this, because this was initially done to kind of convince me that I could do this hand-spun sweater project. I've been kind of stalling because I want to see how this turns out, but I will need to dye all of that yarn that I spun in some color that looks nice. I don't know which color will look nice on me. I have a lot of stuff that's red and purple and dark pink. So yeah, just I will get back to it because it is my crafting New Year's resolution, and I will have a finished sweater by the time we're having New Year's of 2022. I've got to hold myself accountable, and you're all here as witnesses. Yeah, if you raised your husband, Mother's Day counts. Yeah, I can see that. Because I'm a few years older than my partner, there are things that I know just from having been a little older that he's not as familiar with, because I met him when he was still living with his parents here in the UK. But yeah. I actually get really upset when things are too uniform or too perfect, but I also have this overwhelming need to make everything really, really perfect, and it drives me nuts. Like, I actually don't think I wrote a blog on this, but I did sort of an Instagram post or two about the project that I took with me when I traveled around Germany and Austria back in 2013. I needed something to knit that wasn't too complicated, that I could pick up and put down, and that used various quantities of handspun that I had. And it was my first real attempt at trying to make something that was striped but random. And I'm really, really bad at doing random. I just can't. It has to be very, very precise. So, I know I've talked about this a few times, and some people have suggested spinning with my non-dominant hand, or my non-spinning dominant, happens to be one and the same, just to get some variation in my yarn. But I need things for things to be different and organic and interesting, just in general, because it's different. Okay. Well, you're very tall, Karen. Thank you, Sonia, for telling me I'm not fat. I know it's difficult because when I was in high school, I weighed 200 pounds and I'm 5'6". But I've always just been really sensitive about that region because I got picked on a lot, and also having curly hair got picked on a lot. Just being the general weird kid reading dragon novels in school, I got picked on all the time. I wasn't a normal girl, and I didn't know who to hang out with, and I was average smart and like maybe above average capabilities, and it was a real struggle just trying to find my people. And so I got really, really sensitive about my belly region and having really bad body image as a result. So even as an adult, I still have this. Even back when I weighed, 135 pounds, I still had issues with my belly, even though being 5'6" and weighing 135, there really isn't much room to have a belly. Yes, the Dragon Riders of Fern. I've got 2 collections. I have one that I accumulated when I was in South Korea that's now in America. And then I listened to a lot of them on audiobook when I was living in the States. And then I've actually accumulated another set here in the UK. The local charity shop always has a really nice collection of dragon novels from various authors. And it's like someone goes and just dumps their entire collection at once, and then I go and then buy it all, or as much of it as I can. I've definitely been so exuberant to buy them that I come home and realize that I already have that book. I know what you mean, Sonia. Sometimes it's just a matter of looking at what someone else has done and being like, ooh, you should do like this, or what if you did something like that? Because I do this all the time whenever we watch terrible movies, because I never really think that someone's idea is bad. I think what usually happens is maybe their narrative is getting lost because they want to use these special effects, or they need to include this other thing in there, or maybe it wasn't long enough, so they just have to kind of film something and like shove it in the story somehow. Sometimes it's like I think it happens a lot with fantasy movies where their ideas were bigger than their budgets. And so I know where they're going with it, and I'm just desperate to take whatever they've done and make it better. So even if you've never made a full-size sweater, I feel like you could still make suggestions that could be really helpful. Oh my goodness. So okay. I will have to dig around for my other North Ronaldsay when I'm done spinning this. So I've got this full bat, and then this one here. I'll spin these and ply these, and then I will dig around for my other North Ronaldsay fleece and do a similar thing, and talk about them as a comparison, maybe on a live stream, because I have no idea what the next few weeks are going to hold in store for me. But at a minimum, I will try to talk about it during a live stream. Otherwise, I would love to do a follow-up video where I talk about dual-coated fleeces and some of the differences that I've observed during sort of this live stream, spinning this experience. This is very tedious for me. I hate having to do this. Just the amount of vegetable matter in here is driving me nuts. And it will fall out, I know that it will, because it's been falling out while I've been spinning this. But yeah, I feel like there's just something about the way that this animal was treated before it was harvested is giving me a lot of a headache. It wasn't as soft as I wanted it to be, but it has nothing to do with the sheep itself. I think it's more just variations in the North Ronaldsay fleece. But yeah, just all these bits like this, they're really easy to get spun into the yarn and I won't fall out because I've got a little sort of protrusion sticking off the sides. I don't know if you can really see that in the video, but it's sort of like a stick that has I don't know what else to call it. Little protrusion sticking off the sides. And so that's what's making this particular fleece so frustrating to work with. And I would have thought that because there's the longer staple from the hairier bits where it wouldn't actually hold on to the chaff or bits of twigs so much, it really is. And so I need to compare this with my other fleece to see, you know, if there's anything else that kind of got at me from having used different fleeces. Because this, yeah. Oof. I'm not really selling it, but it's such a lovely fleece in general. At least the ones that I've used before. They're very nice. Oh wow, Misty, 6 feet and 120. That is very light. I know, right? Like, I would have loved to be tall and thin and a model. But you get made fun of because you're lanky or you don't have a real feminine shape, you're not petite. It's really frustrating. My cousin, she's 6'4". And she loved wearing heels. And it's sort of like, do you wear heels when you're that tall? Like, heels look great on everybody. They make everybody's body look that much better just because you're distributing the weight differently and you're causing certain muscles to flex. And it really emphasizes, you know, the curviness of legs. So if you're tall, it just makes you taller and it makes you more awkward. And society doesn't like how like the reverse of height. So a tall girl with a short guy, you know. It's also funny because my cousin, she's 6'4" and she married her husband who's only 5'10". Which I love. I love that. She's also a very loving person. She has no reservations about giving you like a full-on hug, and because proportionally she's you know, really tall, it's just everything everything is nice and full. So she gives you a really nice hug whenever she sees you. Thank you, Crystal, for reminding me to just get on with it. I just don't want my annoyance with this yarn to be the result of not having picked out enough of the vegetable matter during the spin. Because I know that this yarn is actually going to be really beautiful once I ply it. So, you know, there is that trade-off. How much energy am I willing to expend to get a decent enough single so that it will just do what I want it to do. Thank you, Molly Beasley. I used to go to school at the U of I in Urbana-Champaign, and I used to drive, I think it's like a 45-minute drive. Oh, what is it called now? I'm thinking of all these British towns. But it was about 45 minutes towards Springfield, near Decatur, and it was a literal barn full of used books, and they had patrol cats. So they'd have like 3 or 4 cats just patrolling around. And I picked up so many wonderful and weird one-off fantasy books, you know, stuff written in like the 70s that I loved, and I've actually incorporated it into my D&D games. So, you will find such interesting little jewels at a thrift store. And our local shop, actually, the manager who works there has put a lot of thought and care into curating a nice selection of thrifted books so that they are reflective of their worth rather than just making everything dirt cheap and then potentially being forced to close because they can't sustain themselves. So I actually appreciate that. So there was this lovely, we've got like 3 or 4 different copies of The Lord of the Rings. Maybe I'll show you really quick. Because I'm looking at it. So we have this copy of The Lord of the Rings with all the illustrations by Alan Lee. And it was at the charity shop, you know, it's pretty sizable, for £10. And I mean, that is also a steal, right? It's really beautiful to read. And my partner, he's read it, and he's done a very good job keeping the dust jacket in good condition as well. But this could easily have been sold for really, really cheap, like £1 or £2. But because it's a very valuable book, you know, they're charging enough so that people who are interested in buying it can help support the shop and what they're doing. So I'm fine spending a few extra pounds because I think originally it was much more expensive than that. Yeah, £50 originally. So I saw it in the window and I was like, I think I was going to the post office to drop off an order, and I saw that and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get this. My mom's only 5'3". My dad's 6'5". I kind of ended up somewhere nearer to my mom in height. Do you ever notice how, and I think this is actually the case when you get a little older, you can suddenly start to hear your parents' voice in your own. So I noticed actually, I can hear my mom's voice in my own. And I mean, that makes sense, right? Because I was born from her. but I didn't notice it when I was younger. And I think it's because I never heard my mom's youthful voice, but I heard her voice a lot when she was in her 30s, because I was born when she was going to turn 25 when I was born. And so her voice from her 30s is what I remember. Isn't that kind of weird? I don't know, it's kind of fascinating. Yeah, sometimes the vegetable matter does just fly off, but just looking at what's fallen out, it's the really tiny pieces are falling out, but those bigger pieces, like the one I was picking out, they are not falling out, and I don't want to have that in my finished yarn. That's actually something when I first started spinning, didn't know about how they made comb top. So those fibers can be heated up to a really high temperature, and it helps with the carbonization process of that vegetable matter, so that it's a lot easier to just get processed out of the wool. And then it's also steamed and stretched in order to go into the spinning machines, because you don't have, you know, human hands sort of like finessing the whole spinning process. But if you skip the spinning machine and go straight from the processed comb top into a spinner's hands, it's just not going to have the same feel. But I also had no idea why the amount of carding I did just never looked, like my wool just never looked as clean as what you would get from combed top. I don't know if all mills do that. I know in the UK there are different restrictions on the animal handling and welfare aspects, and the different types of like chemicals that can be used on the animals and also on the wool. So it could just be a country specific thing, or maybe some mills have different types of technologies than others, and obviously there's the scale difference, so some mills are more small scale than others. So does anyone else know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I definitely do a lot of book rescues. And I never bat an eye. I just actually, what did I buy? I bought a book recently, and it was near the end of the month, so I felt okay to do it. But I didn't even think about it, and I bought the book, and I was like, you know, I should probably not have done that, because it's the end of the month, and we might need that money, you know, for groceries. But that's just where my brain goes, like, oh, I have to have this now. It's the same way I think about fleeces. Sometimes people in our guild, they would be desperate to rehome a fleece that they washed and just hadn't done anything with. And I was the sucker who would take home those fleeces by the end of the session, just because I could not bear to see them tossed out at all, or just sat unused. It's also another reason why I won't give up my book collection. Now that I've started to accumulate one here, I need to actually get a bookcase, because the one that I have over here is just, it's like, if you look at it from the side, right, I've got a row of books here and a row of books here, so you have two sets of books side by side, but from the way that you're viewing it, you can't actually see the books that are behind. So I have this whole rotation system, so the books that I still have left to read are out for me to see, and the ones that I've read get put behind. And that doesn't include all the books that are over here on our shoe rack, Because that's just all the leftovers from my PhD. I have no idea what I'm going to do with that, but you know. Yeah, Sonia, you were talking about having some yarn barf issues with some Navajo yarn that you had spun on a spindle. One of the things that I've done to kind of help with that is if I can use one hand to keep the opening pulled open, then when I'm plying together, I'm kind of like doing this sort of motion, but the yarn for the chain part of the ply that's making the loop, that's kind of like on the outside of my hand, and I find that really helps with freeing up my other hand to prevent yarn barf from happening. So hopefully you know what that where I'm going with that. But that's what I've done in the past. If you are using fresh singles, that's going to be much more prevalent than if you're using a yarn that's been sitting there for a long time. But I find that if you kind of give it some tension and spread it out as you're plying, then yarn barf is less likely to happen. Oh. Chris, your mom was Swedish? That's pretty cool. I have some Swedish Gotland. I actually don't think I've ever shown it on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube. Oh, I shown it anywhere. I'll have to get that out too, because it is another one of these dual coated fleeces that I have. And it's this really beautiful purple color, or purple. Chocolate brown. I don't know why I said purple. I must be tired. Oh dear. All of that sunshine earlier today got to me. East Texas. That's really funny. Okay. So I don't know whether I'll actually be able to spin this any faster. Because like I said, I have a tendency, see, this is one of those bits got stuck in here, and I gotta pull it out, because if I don't, it's going to be uncomfortable to wear. Yeah, so I don't know if I'll actually be able to spin this very quickly at all, because I want to keep it sort of soft spun, and I really love to spin quickly. So in the video that I posted, I think it was like on a Wednesday a couple weeks ago, that video where I show my feet treadling, that's pretty average for me. I can spin faster than that if I need to. If I'm really focused on the spinning, I will spin faster. So going slow is really, really difficult for me, and this is on the largest roll size that I have. So I literally can't go up a size in order to offset the amount of twist I'm putting in here. But like I said, I don't want it to be coarse and prickly, so I have to have kind of a light hand or a light foot when it comes to the treadling. Otherwise, I'll produce a really prickly yarn. I'm also doing a backwards drafting motion, because I have also found from my work with the warp-weighted loom that if I kind of smooth it down a little bit this way as I'm spinning, even if I'm not compressing it a ton or adding a ton of twist, it does kind of trap some of the prickly parts of the fiber so that it lays down as flat as I can make it, I guess. Hopefully that makes sense. I think I talk about this somewhere. I know I talk about it on Instagram, and I think I talk about it somewhere in my Iron Age textile series videos. All right. So there's quite a fair number of you watching today. So thank you so much for watching this live stream where I talk a little bit about hairy wool and why I'm choosing to spin it together. Does anyone else have experience working with dual coated fleeces? Like, do you prefer to hand separate the pieces? I've done this with some of this particular fleece to kind of see what that experience would be like, and I probably hand dehaired about 2 ounces or so. I'll probably carve that up and spin it to see if I just like this fleece dehaired, which I'm probably going to say yes. But, you know, I just wanted to give this fleece a fair shot and try it as an integrated fleece. But I'm curious to hear what you have to say. So, you know, feel free to post in the comments below so that I can get back to it. I have I have it written down on my to-do list to go back and respond to some of the comments from last week's live stream. I've just been so crazy busy and kind of like on call with this business proposition. So my time management has kind of been really erratic and all over the place, and at the end of the day I still have to do things like do the dishes and make dinner, or you know, just sit and relax for the evening so that I'm not all wired. I've also not been sleeping well because of all this. The worst thing was waking up Saturday morning at 7, knowing I have a 10-hour shift ahead of me, where I'm on my feet the whole time and I have to deliver a workshop with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement and make everyone feel like I'm devoting 1,000% of myself to them, so that they come away feeling like, yeah, that was a fun thing that we did this Saturday afternoon. But yeah, I woke up at 7 a.m. thinking, I don't know how I'm going to make today happen, because I woke up 3 different times in the middle of the night, Friday night, and I slept for 8 hours last night, and I can tell you right now it wasn't enough. So this is sort of a way to sum up how this past week has been for me. So, yeah, I will at least sit myself down and do some video editing. I have been dying. I've been doing sort of like background stuff. It's just making myself sit down and do something. It makes me so tired just sitting and not actively doing something engaging. Like, spinning for me is really engaging, but doing some work with the computer is just not engaging enough for me. So it makes me really, really tired, and I'm less likely to edit videos or get photos ready for posting to the shop. And because I keep obsessively checking my email to see if I've heard anything back from this meeting that I had, it's kind of, it made me need to be away from my laptop. So, but yeah, the desire is there, and I will do my best to get to it next week. I think once I have a clear idea of what is actually happening, I'll be able to schedule myself a little bit better than I've been able to for the last couple of weeks. But sometimes just how a one-woman show goes. Does anyone else have, oh, I know. I know, Sonia, you had your thing with your aunt, which was probably just as much fun, if not more fun, than hanging out here. So no need to apologize for that. um, yeah, I think in another life I might have been an actress because I really love acting and being somebody else. But it is extremely exhausting, and it's also one of the issues of being in hospitality, because you want people to feel like they are front and center, the most important thing. And, you know, because I like to teach, I like to tell people what I know. I sort of have an enthusiastic delivery, and I'm not really funny, but I like making puns, so I do that as often as I can. So that's part of the reason why I'm a little bit hoarse today. So if you've noticed that, I'm sorry. But that's also why. Yeah. A natural born teacher, maybe? Because I loved teaching kids and adults how to skate when I was little. So I used to figure skate. And when I was 6 years old, my mom contacted the local news anchor where they had this, it was like a sports feature called One on One. So you would have the sports anchor come to whatever it was that your kid did, and they would sort of do a spotlight with the kids kind of like teaching the sportscaster about whatever sport it was. So, yeah, I did this when I was 6, and I was so unbelievably shy, but I absolutely loved being filmed. I loved being able to teach this person that I saw on TV what I knew. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, slow traveling is very hard. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, if there weren't any other questions about fleeces, I was going to kind of wind down for the day just so that I have time to eat dinner, because tonight is another D&D night, and I have to finish writing some notes for our session. It's going to get really interesting. So right now the party has been traveling through these portals so that they can get from these major cities much more quickly than it would normally take. It would probably take a couple of weeks, whereas this only takes a couple of days. But because there's sort of like the ramping up of all of the world-ending events, and they've taken a slight diversion, it's really going to create an interesting interplay between what they want to do right now versus what they know they have to do, and just kind of finding a balance between this. And there's going to be lots of things that sort of vie for their attention, and so I'm desperate to see how they respond. So yeah, it's me trying to find a way to kind of motivate the characters, but also allow them the opportunity to have more character development. So yeah, I still have a few more things to write down for tonight's session, just in case it happens. But I did want to leave you guys with one last little project I've been working on. I'll probably post to Instagram so that you can actually see these bits I'm talking about. It's really not too bad at the moment, and it's actually much better than the original attempt that I did a couple of years ago when I was experimenting with my North Ronaldsay to see how I wanted to spin it. But I think plying it will make me much happier to use this. and then, yeah, we'll go from there. But to those of you who have used latch hook in the past, I've been working on a project with latch hook. So it's basically a crochet hook like this, and it's got this little latch here. You can see. And what you do is you take bits of yarn and you pull it through this fabric, and you make a little loop and it holds it in place. That's the back side. And I'm making a seat cushion for one of our chairs. And when I was about 12, I begged my mom to buy a carousel horse. And I didn't do anything with it until I was about 16. And when I finished it, I felt like I was a little old for carousel horses by the time I was 16, but I finished it because she bought it for me. So you might be able to kind of see where I've mapped out where the cushion part needs to be. And it's about the same size as what I did when I was 16. So I feel like, you know, it's possible to do it again. But this is an interesting revival for me because my mom had these kits from the 70s that she was part of Creative Circle, which sold a lot of kits for various types of needlecraft and things like latch hooks. So she had them from way back then. And I rediscovered a kit. I don't even remember how old she was when she did it, but it was like of a large dog, and it was a big one. It was probably twice the size of this. So it was probably another section of this. And so I got really obsessed with it, and she's just like, well, I don't have any more of these kits, and you need like certain tools. So I begged her and I pleaded, and we finally went. And it's funny because, you know, she did that kit at probably about 20 years before I got obsessed with it, and it's like 20 years later I'm obsessed with it again. But I want to talk about this in the future because I have a really funny story to tell you about my sense of impatience. But for now, I'm using all of these cast-off bits of yarn, and they're all different thicknesses. So the ones that are on the thinner side, I'm doubling up and sometimes tripling up. These are old thrums, basically the discarded bits from my warp-weighted loom weaving project. So I've kept all of these, and didn't know what I was going to do with them. I thought maybe I would card it up into bats at some point, so I just kind of held on to it. So I've kept them, and I'm actually using these as part of this latch hook project. And there's quite a lot of different yarns in here, so my plan is to use as much of these little bits as I can to do these first rows, and then maybe once I've used most of those yarns that are in there, there might be sort of like a stripe here, and then I can use different yarns for a different stripe, or maybe I could do something that's a little bit less chaotic, because this is very, very chaotic. So many different colors, so many different lengths. I've just been doing this by hand for now, but I also have a guide for wrapping the yarn to cut off the little pieces. So it's not like massively tedious, but I was trying to find ways to use the yarn bits that I have. I've been accumulating these yarns since literally Expertly Dyed's inception. So this is actually a purple yarn here. This is back when I was still in my initial testing for Expertly Dyed in early or mid 2010. So I've been, you know, holding on to them for a long time. So I'm actually going to do something with it. And then I don't know what I will do after this, but I'll tell you about this story in the future when I talk about that. Because I find it really amusing and relatable. So, yeah. It brings back memories. Yeah, I bet. It's so easy and accessible. Like, you don't actually have to be a crafty person at all to do this. You just need these two tools and a will to loop a bunch of these little yarns in place. It doesn't even have to follow a pattern. If you just have a limited color palette, you could just do stripes or swirls, or you could do just, you know, different a different color for each of the little squares, but, you know, kind of randomize it. The sky's the limit. And I just love how I rediscovered this recently, and I was like, oh, now I know what to do with all those little bits of yarn. Yes, tapestry weaving would also be another good use for those yarns. And that's another idea that I've had in my head, kind of kicking around. But I will have to probably do that in another video. And it'll probably be a larger project. But it involves wool locks that I've been accumulating for many years, and I don't know what to do with them. I mean, I do, but I keep changing my mind. So I think this will actually help me solidify what I want to do. And it actually involves an ancient craft, so hopefully that's piqued your interest a little bit. Anyway, so I'm going to close out today. If you have any questions, just post them below. If you follow me on Instagram, I will post some photos of the progress of this yarn, which, remember, was North Ronaldsay, both the outer coat and the inner coat blended together with a tiny little bit of cashmere to increase the softness factor a little bit. And then I will continue on with this thread by locating my other North Ronaldsay and kind of doing a comparison video and discuss it in the future. Because yeah, North Ronaldsay is beautiful and has a lot of potential, but there are certain ways I think it needs to be handled to bring the best properties. And so that's kind of what I want to explore and discuss through this. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful Mother's Day and that you have told your mother, obviously, to have a wonderful Mother's Day, if you've got a partner, etc. Be kind to each other, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone.